The author had never thought there was much to be found in the rainwater pond behind their bungalow in North India, except for quantities of mud and the occasional water buffalo. It was his grandfather who introduced him to the pond's diverse life. When his grandfather first showed him the pond world, he chose a dry place in the shade of an old peepal tree where they sat for an hour gazing steadily at the thin green scum on the water. The buffaloes had not arrived for their afternoon dip, and the surface of the pond was undisturbed. For the first 10 minutes they saw nothing. Then a small black blob appeared in the middle of the pond. Gradually it rose higher until at last they could make out a frog's head, its big eyes staring hard at them. The frog did not know if they were friends or enemies. When Mr. Frog had made sure that they were not herons, he passed this information on to his friends and neighbors, and very soon there were a number of big heads and eyes on the surface of the water. They were treated to a chorus that went, "Walk, walk, walk." In the shallow water near the tree, they could see a dark shifting shadow. When the author touched it with the end of a stick, the dark mass immediately became alive. Thousands of little black tadpoles wriggled into life. The author's grandfather told him that when he was a young man, he had once brought home a number of green tree frogs. He put them in a glass jar and left them on a window sill without telling anyone of their presence. At about 4 in the morning, the entire household was awakened by a loud and fearful noise. Grandmother and other members of the household gathered on the veranda for safety. Their fear turned to outrage when they discovered the source of all the noise. At the first glimmer of dawn, the frogs had with one accord burst into a song. Grandmother wanted them thrown out of the window, but grandfather gave the bottle a good shaking, and that quietened them for some time. Everyone went back to sleep, but grandfather was obliged to stay awake in order to shake the bottle whenever the frogs showed signs of bursting into a song. The following day, one of his aunts took the cover of the bottle to see what was inside. The sight of a dozen green tree frogs so frightened her that she ran off without replacing the cover. The frogs jumped out and got loose in the garden and were never seen again. One day when the author arrived at the pond, he found it already occupied by buffaloes. Their owner was swimming in the middle of the pond. When he saw the author staring at him from across the pond, he smiled. He invited the author to join him for a swim. The author told him that he could not swim. Then he offered to teach it to the author. He dived off the back of the buffalo and swam across to the author, and the author, having removed his shirt and shorts, followed his instructions until the author was struggling about among the water lilies. The boy named Ramu promised to give the author swimming lessons every afternoon. Soon, the author was able to swim across the pond to join Ramu. The author liked the buffaloes too. Sometimes they tried racing them, sitting astride different buffaloes. But they were lazy animals and would leave one comfortable spot only to look for another, or if they were in no mood for hectic activity, would roll over in the water, depositing them into the mud and green scum of the pond. Emerging from the pond in shades of green and brown, the author would slip into the house through the back door to avoid grandmother's wrath, then hurriedly bathe under a tap. Sitting on their favorite buffalo, Ramu and the author watched a pair of saras cranes prancing and capering around each other. They were tall, stork-like birds with naked red heads and long red legs. They were held in great affection by village folk. This particular pair of Saras cranes seemed to have adopted their pond and bungalow, for they were to see them often in the coming months. Both grandfather and Ramu felt that people should be more gentle with birds and animals and not kill them for sport or commerce. Ramu and the author spent many long summer afternoons at the pond. The buffaloes and the frogs and the Saras cranes shared their friendship. They had accepted them as part of their own world, their muddy but comfortable pond.